Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football, continuing with our 2022 season previews as we're taking a look at the Oregon State football team. Before we get into the video, I just wanted to say thank you guys for all the support. Over 980 subscribers now on the channel. The support has been tremendous, and I've just loved talking football with all you guys. In the comment section, you guys teaching me a little bit about all your guys' teams. And if you guys do like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Let's start talking some ball. Jonathan Smith, their first winning season under Coach Smith, he did an absolutely excellent job. And I'll put my hand up and be the first to admit I was wrong about this Oregon State football coming into 2021. Looking at the roster last year going into the season, there wasn't much that excited me about this team. You know, they have an average quarterback with maybe a decent running back, decent pass catchers. There was nothing where it was like, I think they're going to go win 7 games and get to a bowl game. I just didn't think they'd be one of the better teams in the Pac-12. They absolutely proved me wrong. And what I think was the most impressive about what Jonathan Smith was doing was, especially on the offensive side of the ball, just being very methodical and putting his players in the positions that they're going to be able to thrive in. And so looking at the depth chart coming into 2022, you got Chance Nolan back at quarterback, who is a solid college football quarterback, and he proved me wrong. I didn't think he was going to be that good. He was very efficient. 19 touchdowns, only 10 interceptions, threw for almost 2,700 yards, completed 65% of his passes. This offense was not sexy by any means. They didn't spread you out and just throw it all around the yard. They established the run with the great back in B.J. Baylor and then worked off play action. But that can be a very, very effective offense, especially with how well that Oregon State team established the run last year. And so looking towards 2022, I think we're going to get a lot of the same. So we're going to take a look at our offensive line and our running back. So you obviously have a very steady quarterback in Chance Nolan who can move. You can see he's very comfortable in those play action rollouts, getting outside the pocket, using his legs, whether it is to pick up some yards with his legs or getting outside the pocket and throwing on the run. He's very good at both of those. And Jonathan Smith clearly made an emphasis to make that happen. Their offensive line is returning 3 starters from last year. They're losing their all-conference guy center. His name Nathan Eldridge, who was good. When you're watching the film, like, he is one of the better centers in the country. Very, very good football player. But I think this offensive line will largely remain the same. I don't think they're as deep as they were last year. And reading some beat reporters, that is a concern going into the season, is their depth at offensive line. But the starting 5 is a good unit. And then at running back, you get you think you'll get Deshaun Fenwick, Trey Lowe as kind of the guys who are stepping up after B.J. Baylor leaves. Well, hold on. Damian Martinez, a true freshman coming from Texas, is apparently taking a lot of the first-team reps in spring and flashing in a big way. Normally, I am not too high on true freshmen coming in and kind of dominating and being the bell cow back. I go look at this guy. He is 5'11", 220 pounds. He is no 18-year-old true freshman. I mean, you look like a guy like Braylon Allen at Wisconsin. That's how he's built. He is an absolute monster. And looking at this dude's body, it is fully developed. And I can certainly see why you're optimistic about a guy like Damian Martinez coming in and being that dude. And so that I think we're going to see a lot of the same kind of offense that we saw last year. Establish the run. Again, B.J. Baylor is a guy averaging 5.9 yards a carry. Deshaun Fenwick averaged 5.7. Trey Lowe averaged 6.4. He's more of the pass catching third down kind of guy. This run game should be very good. And then you establish the run, and then you work off the play action. Looking at the pass catchers, yeah, they lose a guy like Trevon Bradford, who was their leading pass catcher last year, caught 42 balls for 631 yards, but they're returning pretty much everybody else. And again, these guys don't need to be crazy special. They just need to do their job. This offense isn't predicated around wide receivers being alpha wideouts and making plays by themselves. It's predicated around working that play action, establishing the run, and then kind of beating teams over the top and be more opportunistic in the passing game. And guys like Trayshawn Harrison, Lucas Musgrave, guys like that, you're going to have to step up. And then an X factor, and I didn't really know much about this kid till I watched a little of the 2022 spring game. Silas Bolden caught 2 touchdowns. He's going to be a sophomore this year. Maybe he can kind of step up and be one of those hidden gems, if you will. as a pass catcher for that Oregon State team. So I don't see this offense is never going to be the most explosive offense. But they ranked what? They have them fourth in efficiency on the offense side of the ball. They'll run for 5 yards of carry. When you bring your guys in, kind of load the box with 8 men, they're going to go play action and pass over you. They're not going to be super explosive, but they're going to be very methodical, which is rare in college football these days. You don't see many offenses try to establish kind of the run and be patient and then work your way down the field. A lot of it is predicated on explosive plays, which is important. But I really do respect what Oregon State's doing on that offense side of the ball, saying, we're just going to run it right down your throat, and then we're going to pass over you when you load that box. And so I think you're going to get a lot of the same. However, the defensive side of the ball is where I think you need to make some improvements. This defense was not very good last year, and it starts up front. 109th in sacks last year. They just didn't seem to have a guy that you wanted to go to rush the passer. And we talk about when we evaluate defenses, it kind of starts with how well can you rush your defensive line. Only need to rush 4, get pressures, get tackles for loss, sacks, negative plays that turn the ball over or help you get off the field. Oregon State didn't really seem to have that, and that was probably their weakest part of their defense last year. Now, you got a few guys on the outside linebacker spot. They run this 3-4 scheme, which they have a new defensive coordinator in, and it sounds like they're not married to this 3-4 scheme. And so I think what you're going to see is, okay, we might not have the studs that are going to be able to create pressures like a Kayvon Thibodeau, but we're going to scheme up pressures. And you look at a team like Oklahoma State, the other OSU down in Oklahoma. They don't have stud edge guys. They have solid edge guys. They led the team they led the country in sacks last year because they were scheming up these pressures, and that's what the 3-4 can do for you. You have a lot of guys standing up who are more athletic. You don't know where the blitzes are going to come from. You can get a little exotic. You can get a little confusing with your blitz packages. I think with this new defense coordinator with Trent Bry, I think that's what he's going to try to do. And again, when you don't have the absolute studs that Oregon State seems to lack a little bit, maybe that's what they're going to need to try to do. I do want to shout out Andrew Chatfield, guy coming over from Florida who's a top 250 recruit in the 2018 class. I think he can kind of make some noise and maybe be one of those studs that you kind of rely on to get some of those pressures off the edge. And then the interior defensive line spot, which is very important. When you run the 3-4, you got to have an absolute mountain in the middle. They have some guys coming back, but it seems like that has been a weak spot for Oregon State. So hopefully maybe they can get some production there. But I'm more excited for just switching up the scheme a little bit. Getting some new guys, some different looks, setting some different pressures, and getting quarterback pressures, getting sacks, getting tackles for loss a little bit different. And so that's kind of what I'm optimistic about for this defense side of the ball. At the middle linebacker spot, Omar Speights comes back. He's very, very good. Kind of flies around the field. It obviously hurts to lose a guy like Avery Roberts, who's led the Pac-12 in tackles for the last 2 years. That'll hurt. But I think you have guys like Omar Speights and like Kyrie Fisher who are talented enough to kind of make those plays. And then you look at the back end. This is the best part of this unit. They're returning pretty much all their starters from last year. A guy like Alton Julian, who I believe tore his ACL last year, hopefully will be back. But all these guys from last year are going to be back. And that's the most important unit to have some familiarity with, some chemistry with. On the back end, having those safeties and corners having played together for a while now, I think this will be a very, very good unit. And I think it's going to come down to this defense. If they're going to take steps forward, which they were not a very good unit last year, it's going to have to come down to, can they get some pressures on the quarterback, create some of those negative plays? Because that is really what seemed to be lacking with Oregon State last year. Taking a look at their schedule, we're going to pull up their schedule real quick. DraftKings has them as 6.5 wins, which seems reasonable. This team last year, you take a look at their schedule last year, they lost to California and Colorado. Oregon State plays those guys 10 times, they win 9 of them. And that's a 9-win season for Oregon State if they don't drop those 2 games. 6.5 wins seems like the bare minimum for me. You start at home against Boise State. That's a good group of 5 team coming in. I believe Oregon State is 4-point favorites. This is really, you're going to get immediately a good look. I like this first game because if Oregon State's as good as some of us think they can be, they're going to handle Boise State. Boise State's a good team, but Oregon State's also a very good team. And if you are as good as you think you are, they should not have a problem handling Boise State. And then they go on the road to Fresno State. Two really tough out-of-conference games. Two guys with experienced quarterbacks with Jake Haener at Fresno State and Hank Bachmeier at Boise State. It's going to be a very exciting first two games of the season. If they can win both of those and then pick up a win against Montana State, going 3-0 into Pac-12 play is going to be exciting. And you get kind of the two big the two best teams in the Pac-12 for my money this year. USC at home, and then you go on the road to Utah. Obviously, beat Utah last year. Utah's returning a lot of guys. They're also losing some key guys. These two games, would I pick Oregon State to win these games with all the talent that USC has on paper? They haven't shown they can play it on the field yet, but on paper, that team is very loaded, especially on the offense side of the ball. And then Utah, obviously, the returning Pac-12 champions. I wouldn't pick Oregon State to win both these games, but if they can steal one of those games and kind of go into the latter half of the Pac-12 schedule with a 5-1 record, this team could either go like 6-6 and have a solid bowl eligible year, or they could maybe put it together like a 10-2 season and kind of have something special cooking in Oregon State. On the road at Stanford, very winnable game. Washington State, Colorado, Washington, Cal, Arizona State, all winnable games. Now, again, Oregon State's not a team that you're throwing away wins. Like, that's a win, that's a win, that's a win. But they are capable, certainly capable, and probably the favorites against each one of these teams, especially an Arizona State team that at this point in the season could just be an absolute shambles. And then you finish at home against Oregon in the rivalry game. That'll be an exciting game. We'll see what Oregon brings to the table this year. Obviously, new coach, new quarterback. They have a lot of moving pieces, but they also are very talented. I'm telling you, the Pac-12 North this year is very, very gettable. I mean, you take a look at the Pac-12 North right now, and there's not a lot of good teams. The best team is Oregon, and then Washington, a lot of question marks. Washington State, a lot of question marks. Cal and Stanford have just been absolutely dreadful the past couple of years. Oregon State's comfortably the second best team in that conference. And a few ball games go their way, they could be playing for a Pac-12 title in that North Division. And so this season for Oregon State, my outlook is I think 6 wins is the minimum. They should be winning 6 games. I fully expect them to win 6-7 games. But I really do think this season could turn into a 10-2 season if they can kind of put it together. I'm not saying they're going to go 10-2, probably not. But I think certainly if you can pick up some of those big wins against USC or Utah, steal one of them, I would love to be going into Oregon, that game, that final game. You get them at home. And if you have a 9-2 record, that's exciting. I mean, that with the Pac-12 championship game appearance on the line, that's about all you can ask for if you're an Oregon State fan. And again, Jonathan Smith, he's bringing a lot to be excited about. They're having some change of phase and change of coaching on the defense side of the ball. I'm not picking this team to lose many Pac-12 teams. So with that said, that'll do it for our 2022 season preview for Oregon State. This is going to be an exciting year for them, and hopefully they can kind of take this year from 2021, which they were a good team. Let's make that a great team in 2022. Let's go 10-2. Let's go play for a Pac-12 championship game. With that being said, appreciate you guys watching. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.